Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special webinar on reimagining schools. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the world was living in a learning crisis. How do we make sense of the shutting of the school on account of COVID-19? Depressed? Nope. Silver lining? Yeah. And to see the silver lining and reimagine schools and schooling, we have with us Mr. Jaspal Sidhu. I have great pleasure in introducing Mr. Sidhu here. Jaspal Sidhu is a Singaporean. He is the founder and chairperson of the SIS Group of Schools. The SIS Group is Indonesia's largest chain of quality private K-12 schools. The group also has schools in Myanmar, India, South Korea. SIS is currently in a strategic partnership with the International Finance Corporation, an arm of the World Bank, to expand its operations both in Indonesia and other countries. In 2019, the SIS Group of Schools was awarded the Financial Times IFC Global Education Award for its transformational work in education across geographies. Jaspal graduated from the National University of Singapore, the famous NUS, with a degree in civil and structural engineering. He further obtained a master's in business administration with distinction from the University of Hull. He is also Indonesia's three-time amateur stand-up comedian champion. On a lighter note, as a matter of other hobbies he has or he cultivates, Jaspal speaks openly in international education conferences across the globe, from Cape Town, Dubai, Hong Kong to Singapore. These include conferences organized by impact investors, private equity companies, school organizations, and the IFC. In today's session, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about a variety of issues. Jaspal comes with an ocean of experience in terms of his core understanding of the schools and schooling, the core service which is offered by the core, exactly not service, but an enlightenment kind of experience which ought to be offered by a school. And then what makes a great school in terms of infrastructure, technology, teachers, students, the entire learning ecosystem. He has a full view of the ecosystem. And I thought it will be a great experience for all the people to learn from his experiences. Let me welcome Jaspal. Fabulous good afternoon there in Singapore, and good morning to everybody in India.
Hi, hello. I'm going to share
what I propose is that you could take another next 15 to 20 minutes in a presentation. Take us through your thought process, and then we will invite questions from the participants. I can see that more than 100 people are already live, and the number is increasing. To all the people who are joining us from various parts of the world, to all of you, I request that please share your thoughts, reflections, observations, questions in the chat box, and we will take them up suitably in between. But before we come to that, I will also be throwing some questions in the poll, which will come to you. But before that, let's hear what Jaspal has to say on reimagining schools. Over to you, Jaspal.
Thank you. Just want to do a quick check. Can you see my screen?
Very much. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Dr. Navneet, and hello to everyone from Singapore, where we all are stuck at home, like I'm sure everyone else is. This is indeed a real privilege for me to be invited to probably one of the most exciting universities that we are going to see in recent times. I have heard and seen what Vijay Bhumi University is planning, and I must say that your university president, Mr. Sanjay Padode, has obviously reimagined tertiary education. So congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, if I was doing this 6 months ago, I reckon we will also be debating over these very common topics that we often hear experts sharing their diverse views on. What is the purpose of schools? What are these organizational structures? Are they traditional? Are they modern? Is standardized testing good? Is it bad? What are the options? What are the other ways to do this? And I can tell you, and after an hour or two of debates, all the experts normally conclude, and rightly so, that it is the environment that we need to focus on, that it has to be conducive. But I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, today we do not have that luxury of such philosophical debates, especially for someone like me, an operator of schools. And therefore, I will not be taking this route. COVID-19 has ripped through our lives, our businesses, and our schools. As an operator of international schools in the region in the last 30 years, I cannot imagine what tomorrow's schools will be like, let alone reimagine it. So where do you start? Where do you look for answers? I think a good place to start is a place where there is already an agreement. The importance of a conducive teaching and learning environment. And ladies and gentlemen, before we begin to reimagine it, we need to know what it is like today. A crisis will give you data. In the last 6 weeks, stuck in my home, I decided to reach out to my network. I interviewed, I surveyed, I just had conversations, light, heavy, with principals, with teachers, with parents, with board members, with investors, with consultants, with architects from different parts of the world. In fact, I think some of you are probably listening in. So thank you for helping me out. And I'm still talking to more today, and I'm still adding to this data as we go along. I wanted to figure out what worked and what did not in this current crisis. And let me share today exactly what I have learned. When you look at a school, and I know they're both educators, funders, my friends, parents listening in. So here's the thing. When you look at a school, one of the best ways to examine a school is through the lens of what I call, or my colleagues and I call, the 3 Ps. First, we have the student in the middle here. That always must be our focus. And around that learner be the educator. And then we have the second P, the program, your approach to the curriculum or your pedagogy. And then we have the third P, the place, which is the physical environment of the learner. So people have asked me, hey, Jaspal, is this a great school? How do I look at the school? And I always tell them, make life easy. If you are not an educator, like me, I'm an operator, look at these 3 Ps. Now, I have 2 sets of data that I want to show you today. These are sentiments of our teachers before and during the pandemic. And these center around their inner feelings, or what I will call their state of mind. Before the crisis, and I've been collecting this data for several years, the teachers would express these sort of emotions: their frustration, their fatigue, their fulfillment, their satisfaction, their pressures. They feel respected, but they also feel stress. Today, a lot of them tell me this is what they're feeling. They are fearful, they feel insecure, they feel so alone, they're stressed, and they feel all kinds of pressure. Now, notice I marked stress in red, and I hope you can see the color. Notice there are sentiments on both sides of the pandemic fence. Now, you may argue and say, hey, Jaspal, that's a very small sampling. But have a look at this. Dr. Mark Brackett from Yale, he led a similar survey of 6,000 educators in 2018. And this was way before the pandemic, to understand what teachers were feeling back then. This is what Dr. Brackett showed at a conference. I pause to let you quickly scan this slide. And then very recently, Dr. Brackett surveyed another 5,000 teachers. And this is what he found. This was in March. Now, I was pleased to note that my early findings were quite similar to those of Dr. Brackett. But I wanted to know, like the engineer, I wanted to know what was that one reason today? What was that one main reason that parents were feeling stressed? And they all mentioned parents. So I decided to examine parental behavior. So typically, if you're a school operator out there, or a teacher, or a principal, or an investor, and if you've been in a school environment, you will realize that your parent interaction is usually below 50%. It can range anything from 30 to 45. It's always the same parents that come. It's always the same parents that help out in bazaars, the same parents who come for education programs, the same parents. But just look what happened within the first 2 weeks when online teaching started. There was a spike in parent interaction. In fact, one school reported that 99% of their parents interacted with their teachers almost 3 times a week. It was natural. Parents were concerned. Some were anxious because online learning and teaching was new. But a week or 2 after, when parents got used to it, when some parents got used to it, that interaction dropped to about 75%. But it was still high. Now, I predict, given the uncertainty in the economy, given the overall anxiety in the next 2, 3, maybe even 4 years, I predict parent interaction, parent involvement will be high, higher than the pre-COVID-19. Now, why is this important? Please look at this. As soon as parent interaction increased and teachers came under scrutiny, in fact, some of them under abrupt scrutiny, there was a corresponding rise in stress levels. One teacher told me that she could not concentrate in this crisis because her husband lost his job. Some struggled with parents insisting that they give more homework. Some wanted less. Several teachers sought counseling. Several even went on medication to calm the anxieties. Now, what they all told me was they just could not deliver the kind of lessons that we want for our children, stimulating and inspiring. Well, how could they? They were highly stressed. But hang on. Didn't I say earlier that teachers were also stressed before the pandemic? And I wanted to know what were their reasons then. And I've collected data over the last few years. The next 10 bubbles that I'm going to show you capture the major stress points, the major reasons for our teachers' stress every day, every week, and every year of their teaching life. Parent scrutiny, personal issues, maybe things are going on at home, technology, some of them may not be savvy, they may be struggling with it. They need training, and if they feel the weak jigsaw in the whole puzzle. Admin work, teachers are doing a lot of extra work that takes time from lesson planning. Discord in management hierarchy, poor leadership. I call that poor leadership. The physical environment, she may not be happy with her table, her chair, the lighting, the air. Poor feedback channels, she feels ignored, or he feels ignored. No channels to pour their sorrows. Lack of developmental opportunity. She's stuck. No autonomy because things are too rigid. Career stagnation because it's a single school, there's nowhere to go. Now, these bubbles and the stresses and strains that they create, and they will tell you this, are reasons why our teachers are struggling to deliver the kind of lessons that we as parents, we as operators wish that they would, which is stimulating and inspiring. Now, by the way, those orange colored bubbles, they are their stress points right now in the middle of these, well, in this crisis. I really can't be in the middle, but right now, these are the major stress points. So we all know, by the way, student behavior is another reason. Now, we all know what stress does to us. And there are a lot of theories out there. But I reckon this graph captures it all. Some stress is good. Sadly, our teachers are to the right of that little peak. And that's where our teachers are most of the time. And they tell this to us. Data shows this. But unfortunately, education, stewardship, leadership is not listening. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can have all the philosophical debates you want around standardized testing, on technology, on school organization structures. I say to you, unless you de-stress your frontline workers here, in this case, our teachers, our education system will struggle to change along the pace we all want. Outside the education industry, something different is happening. Corporations have woken up to the importance of their biggest asset, human capital. And there's deep understanding, deep appreciation into the science of well-being. And frankly, there are many, many models out there for us to emulate and to learn from. Starbucks, for example, treats their employees' well-being very seriously. They've created a well-being app to help promote their staff's mental and emotional resilience. Marriott came up with an award-winning approach to promote employee well-being through a very clever certification system. And that approach, ladies and gentlemen, is available to other organizations. And get a load of this, is made available also to schools. So let me ask you this. If employees of Starbucks handle one customer at a time, and if employees of Marriott handle one customer at a time, and they're leading the charge, the understanding, and they're taking action to look after the well-being of their employees, why are we letting teachers who handle 30 customers at a time, or even 40 to 50 customers at a time, behind? Our education system is broken, and we need to look outside our industry. We need to get enthusiasm and ideas outside the industry. We need to reimagine our attitudes towards the well-being of our teachers. I also examine other issues that contributed to poor teaching and learning that took place in some of the schools during this crisis. Schools said that two other main contributors to the stress and their poor teaching and learning that was going on was poor communication and collaboration skills of their team. So in one school, not only information flow was very slow in the middle of this crisis, teachers' emails were very poorly written. Parents were lost. And while in another school, they decided to get into what we call the over-communication mode with clear and regular emails. Expectations were laid out, teacher-parent relationship was good, and they were able to deliver good classroom learning and teaching. One school I spoke to said that as soon as they heard about the COVID virus in China, they decided to get into a collaboration mode, and that was easy because their culture was a very collaborative culture. They had weekly Zooms, weekly session with leadership, weekly discussions. So no school in that group was operating in isolation. So to create a conducive environment for great learning for our teachers, we need a different kind of training, not just how to teach Singapore math or mark papers or create lesson plans, but a spectrum of soft skills like collaboration and communication. 3 schools mentioned a few interesting qualities that stood out during the crisis. Teachers who made their lessons interesting and saw better student engagement. The teachers were resourceful. But a more interesting story was that there was a teacher who saw the students were so lethargic and anxious, he decided to start every lesson online with a joke. And he got others to tell jokes. And he made his lessons funny. Apparently, he has been and still is the school's most popular teacher, crisis or no crisis. Our teachers need different kinds of skills. We need different types of teachers in our schools. We need to reimagine the training and the attributes that we look for in our teachers. Let's examine the next P, the program. I spoke to schools that seemed to me to be very much entrenched into a traditional approach in teaching and learning. So that these schools tried to lift the entire day of student onto online schedule. Clearly, students couldn't sit in front of a computer for long periods. There was no offline activities. They were dishing out content, assessments after assessments, homework after homework. They were rigid. Their school insisted they can only use one kind of technology. The teachers would mute everyone over Zoom and she'll be the ones that was taking. It was just not fun. And then there was another bunch of schools who said, no, we've always been a different kind of school where our approach has been a very blended approach using both technology and activity-based, where students collaborate and they were easily broken up into groups over Zoom where they spend time understanding about independent learning, where teachers spend time understanding their students' independent learning levels and therefore were able to provide personalized approach. Where teachers understood gamification and used technology accordingly. You see that yellow things that I've shaded? This was named in the crisis as main reasons that they were struggling. So both these schools had something to say about their students. Apparently there was quite high involvement here. So I asked them what they meant. They said login attendance. But there was higher engagement here. Now, compare this pedagogical approach with what employers have been saying all this while when they're looking for qualities of their staff, given the technological era and the unpredictable world where our children are growing up, from problem solving to teamwork to creativity. You're not going to see or get much of this from a traditional approach. See the one I marked in red? Adaptability and resilience. This will become even more important after this pandemic. We need to reimagine our school program in the face of an unpredictable world. The final P, the place. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been very annoyed by the fair amount of opinion out there that predicts the demise of face-to-face learning in K to 12 schools, kindergarten to grade 12 schools. And they are saying that platforms will replace K to 12 schools with online learning and teaching. Well, this pandemic has put this debate to rest. Our schools are not going to go anywhere. Why? Because our children need interaction, they need friends, they need outdoor play, and they need safe areas to socialize. This cannot be the answer to schools in the long term. Nor this. And the pandemic has shown us that. So don't let any fund manager, any edtech company, any startup guru tell you that technology is going to replace our schools tomorrow. K to 12 schools are here to stay. So if they're here to stay, then we need to reimagine our school environment more carefully. I believe after this, all of us and parents will become far more health conscious. In fact, I think we'll become germ conscious, wary of where we are and what we touch. Parents will demand very high safety standards in schools. And I've been talking to architects, consultants, environmentalists, and educators. And I've consolidated some thoughts. Now, I'm not an expert in school design, but let me share with you how everyone is reimagining schools. These policies will ensure that facility managers will be far more and better trained in health and safety practice. There will be compulsory hand sanitizers in schools, frequent cleaning schedules, dedicated areas that allow for temperature taking, and movement restriction in schools. I see possibly very strict stay-home policies for anyone with a minor sniffle or cough. There must be transparency on data that schools collect. In Singapore, our daily government briefing is transparent. The WhatsApp they send to us is transparent, and it adds confidence. Leadership will have to share incidents and interventions openly, and they must treat these meetings as important as those meetings they have on curriculum and pedagogy. The pandemic has also shown us that people can actually stay home and work to some level. So stay-home policies will be tighter. In fact, some schools are saying they're looking at facial recognition to replace the traditional tapping of the cards for admission into schools. For investors, your capital expenditure will have to focus on health and safety. For example, schools can have more wash basins strategically placed for washing their hands, for students to wash their hands more often, and more attention paid to ventilation in classrooms. Schools need to explore more germ-resistant finishes and coatings for their school structures. Eco-friendly designs must come to the forefront. Why? Because we have seen the vulnerability of the environment. These may include air filter systems, energy-saving fixtures. There must be a real effort to accelerate carbon footprint reduction. Space. This is interesting, and I know there are a few architects listening in. So they agree, and educators also agree. Now, all unused space need to be examined and made available to reduce densities. so students can hang out and can prevent overcrowding. So spaces for project work, which you need to improve to promote collaboration, must be better designed to not only promote creativity, but also prevent overcrowding. And I think there's a room for independent health and safety inspection that all schools must be subjected to. We need to reimagine the design of our schools. With that, let me review the journey I took in the last 18 to 20 minutes. I was told to speak between 18 to 20 minutes. I started with the usual topics, usual debates we hear on TV, on internet. And I say I won't be speaking about this because these are well-debated topics. And I don't have the experience nor the qualification to engage professors and academics, and some are listening in. And you gentlemen and you ladies, with all your knowledge, have really created wonderful conversations around this. But I also say almost always after the debates, everyone agrees you need a conducive environment. What I've done is I've shared one way of looking at the environment. And finally, I've said, as an operator of international schools, this crisis has given us a great place to start. And I've collected data, and I'm sharing the data with you. We need to reimagine the well-being, the training, and the attributes of a teacher. We need to reimagine the programs of our school, moving away from traditional approaches, project-based skills, perseverance, entrepreneurship. These are skills that employers are asking for. And frankly, these are the kind of programs that stood the test of online teaching. And we need to reimagine the physical environment as we become very health conscious. The use of technology, strict policies, better design, better materials, the proper use of space to promote overcrowding, but yet promote collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I have tried my best to summarize within the time given to me. I am prepared to take questions. Thank you.
Right. I think that's a very, very dispassionate but very balanced perspective. The kind of issues you have chosen to take up in your slides and your explanation on each of the critical issues shows that you have a dispassionate and detailed eye on the scenario which is still evolving. I think the first thing I recollect in one of the recent webinars on competition overdose, I remember you attended, and I know you were able to think the state of competition in the school education sector, and you mentioned about choosing your stakeholders, choosing your shareholders appropriately. I think at this opportunity, this is the right opportunity. Perhaps I can request you to elaborate a little more, and our audience can make full sense of that.
I would. In fact, I think my new investors know I've been very, very passionate about the need to balance profit and impact. And so right now, till before the pandemic, investors were rushing to invest in K-12 education. Why? Because they see this. In fact, I think even now, it's proven that this is one of the industries that will stand the test of time. So investors are looking at this industry very, very carefully. And I've experienced that, and I will continue to experience this, and I'm sure other K-12 operators. But it is very important to choose the right investors, the right funders behind you. If it is profit and profit alone, I would recommend that you stay away from these investors, because this is what they will drag the school down. For example, right now, given the pandemic, let me explain to you what schools are facing, a number of schools are facing. One, They've got fixed expenses next year. Teacher contracts have been signed, rentals have been signed. And parents are coming back and say, I want a discount. Parents are coming back to say, I don't think I should be paying you because it's online. I'm not getting the full impact. Now, investors who understand will say, let's give the parents a compassionate discount and let's keep our teachers. Those who are looking at profit, their thought process will be, let's give them discounts. Let's now start packing the classrooms into bigger classrooms, and let's see which teachers we can let go.
Right. And one of the, I would say, a generic, very generic problem, which is not just frustrating quality of education at the school level, but I think across the education value chain, is the admin workload on the teachers. I interact with friends all over the world in schools, in universities, and come to one conclusion that admin work is simply killing the quality of education. It is like the termite in the system, which is slowly and consistently killing the quality of education. Before the tree or the system crumbles, what is practically be done about it? Can you show us some solutions?
Yeah, I think, frankly, I'm seeing this stress point decrease in some of the schools because they brought in technology. I think a lot of the admin work must and can be taken away with the appropriate platforms, your EMS systems, your LMS systems, whether it's online marking. There are wonderful systems out there, and I see this helping teachers. But there are other areas where I think, honestly, school leadership and teachers need to sit down and have these discussions. For example, I've seen schools where teachers need to stand at the door and monitor students going home, right? So they're standing there and they're watching which child is given to which parent. Now, I understand security is important, but think about it. That's almost an hour standing right there, saying goodbye to a child and transferring the child to the appropriate vehicle or helper, whoever that comes. Now, surely technology can play a role. Surely someone else can play a role in this. So it's improving. And I think I think teachers need to have these great conversations as well.
Right. Then there is a question which says that, of course, it's very obvious that online learning has inherent limitation in terms of ability to facilitate practical engagement in any subject. How do we compensate for the lack of physical activity or practicals which are to be carried out by the students when we switch over to online classes? What are the best way to address this limitation?
So again, I'm learning from a lot of the schools, right? And those schools that took the entire day and loaded it on online and insisting that the child needs to sit in front of the computer between such a such time to such a such time, almost like a school, they were the ones who were struggling. And something in me tells me that in their heart, they don't think this is right. Because I'm not a teacher, I feel it's not right. But why do they do this? I think there is a lot of parental push here, a lot of parental insistence that, hang on, this is a school day. Why is my child off the computer after 15 minutes? So we need to understand the teachers. We also need to understand what the parents are pressing onto the teachers. So to answer your question, you have to have offline and online activities going on. You just have to. I mean, I've reached to a point where I've decided I'm not going to do more than 2 Zooms a day, 2 Zooms in the morning, and I get up, I stretch. So Practical solutions. In fact, one school, even for the secondary school boys, every 15 minutes, they got them up to do a dance, which the music teacher came up with. So it was sort of math with music. So they would have, like you have those, they call the flash mobs. All of a sudden they break up into a dance. So it's physical activity that you require, right? And it's something that teachers need to explain to parents, and parents need to understand. But it's not easy. It's because most of the problems, most of the complaints are coming from the early childhood up to about grade 3, lower primary. These are the very unsatisfied parents, because they don't know what to do with the kids, and therefore they think they need to be in front of computers. So there has to be a lot of conversations with these parents, and you have to find practical solutions, including mixing it with music and drama and dance and just body movements. Otherwise, just rigidity sets in, right?
Right. And let me share with you and all the audience the results of the two poll questions we just posted for the audience. One was that how satisfied you were with the quality of education in schools prior to COVID-19. So about 75% of people were satisfied, and that if we split that category with highly satisfied and only satisfied, the proportion is about 10% were highly satisfied and about 65% were satisfied, and the remaining 25%, wherein 5% were highly dissatisfied and remaining were dissatisfied. So this was the satisfaction level, and you can see that most people, about 25% people thought that the quality had a lot to be improved. And if you consider the satisfied angle, that the scope of improvement further increases, which in some sense validates that the hypothesis we are seeking to probe this morning, that there is a lot of scope for reimagining schools and deliver something far more impactful.
Sorry to interrupt. It'll be interesting to for these 25% who are not satisfied to reflect what are the reasons for their unhappiness. Was it the program per se? Was it the lack of time? Was it the lack of resources? Because I've also seen a rigid curriculum being treated in a very fun way.
Right.
So, and I think a lot of it, one of the things I know there are two friends of mine from Deloitte listening in, and I am asking them to help me think how we can find the appropriate attributes for the teacher of the future, to reimagine the teacher. Now, if I can just add one point. So I've asked myself, what are the outstanding qualities of a teacher that will stand the test of time, right? Pre-COVID, post-COVID, pre-whatever disease, post-whatever disease, children's children. What is these things that what are we looking for? And I've coined this term called effector, EFFECTOR, effector. There's no definition. You won't find it in a dictionary, but it's someone, in my mind, it's someone who makes a positive effect. So the first E stands for earnest. You just got to be earnest, because teachers don't earn much. You just have to be an earnest individual who's out there working to provide quality education. Second is funny. I tell you today, I guess because of my stand-up comedy experience, and I can tell you, a funny teacher makes connections. And you can train yourself to be funny. The other F is firm. You have to be firm. A firm teacher is able to control a crowd, control a bunch of students. You got to be enthusiastic. The other C is consistent. If you're not consistently behaving in a manner, students are going to get confused. T is timeliness. If you yourself can't meet deadlines, don't ask your students to meet those deadlines. O is open-minded. Personalized learning requires an open mind, and R is the researcher. And notice I didn't say technology. because these are the qualities that will stand the test of time. And I'm asking groups like Deloitte and other HR companies to say, how can we find the right training and rubrics to find such teachers? And we shall try.
Right, right. And that takes me to the second poll question, where we asked, "Do you think teachers are stressed?" And a whopping 90% people have responded, "Yes, they are stressed," and only 10% thought that they're not stressed. And that takes me to my next question to you. Can you give us a live example where technology can take over a part of the admin load? Yes, I agree. But would you like to elaborate a little bit where you can say that this application of artificial intelligence or a particular solution has kind of demonstrated at least initial results, if not a great deal of empirically valid results?
Okay, so there is a school group, and I won't mention in that school group, that has well-being embedded into the school's program. So it is not a conversation. It is not something that they do by the way. It is actually embedded in the school's philosophy and the school's program. And that thinking trickles downwards. And I've attended one of their well-being programs where teachers and students just say there are no lessons. Let's sit, let's talk and see what stresses us. I didn't see any technology at play. It was just conversation. Students were sharing, teachers were sharing, and even teachers were having their own well-being sessions. Now I spoke to one of their CEOs, and he said from feedback he expects to see that they were performing very, very well in this online current crisis. So the solution that you ask is not directing teachers to resources by saying, you feel stressed, okay, here is a resource, go and do meditation. You feel stressed, let me give you a Spotify link, go and listen to this music. It can't be. It has to be part of the school's culture. Well-being has to sit way up front. And I think, honestly, Dr. Navneet, I think we really need to stop looking inside the education industry. I think if we pause and look what corporations are doing, we are going to learn a lot. So
that's a very, very valuable insight, I think. That's a very valuable insight. If we look around, if we can examine other people's experiences, my sense is that we can derive better insights, better helps for ourselves. I think that's a very valuable point. Now I'm taking you to the management part of the issues where there's a question here that middle management in the school may lack training, and generally there are representatives of the ownership who could be in middle management or senior management who may not have the required sensitivity or the understanding. So that's one problem which has been mentioned in the chat box. Let's take up that first, and then I'll come to the wrong KPIs.
What was the question? How do you kick out the representative from the board?
I mean, the middle management in schools may lack training and required sensitivity. So how do you address this? So basically, you have people who are influencing your decisions without having the required empathy and understanding of the subject matter.
Yeah, I'm part of a board which has people from different backgrounds and different industries, right? And when you bring diversity into an environment, you are going to learn from outside your own industries. Now, the problem in schools, in some of these boards, are there is no diversity. Their owners will have their sons, their daughters, whoever else sitting on the board, who will pretend like they know what's happening. And very unfortunately, I have no solution to say how to get rid of such person. Now, but The only and I've seen this being done where you actually take that one person to another school and show him this is what you can achieve if you, sir, open your mind and step back. Now, the problem with a lot of these owners are they are not educators. You know, a lot of it is given, a position is given because I need to know what's happening at that level, so I put my daughter there, right? And she may have come from some US or UK with a little bit of a background, doesn't know what to do. Okay, why don't you go and be there? And overnight, she becomes the director of, I don't know, what have you. Now, unfortunately, this is happening. If it's not happening, then I think we need to have those hard conversations. If it is happening, you know what the solution I feel is to you can't tell owners reps to step out, but what you can do is understand they have an intrinsic element for their schools to do well. That's a great start. Take them and show them what this school is doing.
Right, right.
Right. And
That's,
then
I think, a very practical advice, I would say. And then there could be another problem on the part of the youngsters, particularly young teachers, who may end up setting wrong KPIs, and that can have a chilling or frustrating effect amongst the teachers in a school. So how do you address that? This sudden burst of wrong KPIs is not disrupting the morale.
um, look, KPIs should be agreed, right? When you have a set of KPIs, it can't be top down. The school would have standard KPIs, and these are usually negotiated it's like a contract in the beginning of the year. You would sit with the manager or the teacher and say, these are the KPIs, this is what I expect you to achieve. And there's always pushback and say, no, I want to focus on this and I want to focus on that. So I see it as a contract. I see it as an agreement. And once that is put in place, there should be review, there should be a peer review or a management review to see how those KPIs are doing. So any burst of over enthusiasm will only be temporary because you have these check and balances and a review. But if you take away these review processes, then that burst will have a long-term impact. That's number one. Number two, I think feedback channels, and I've said this in many conferences, one of the reasons schools don't do well is because they do not have feedback channels that are really meaningful and that are robust. You find, why is Apple, why is Google, why is Marriott doing well? Because the CEO and the company, they have feedback channels. In fact, I think Apple calls it instantaneous feedback. You buy a computer, you get an email, you tell them what you don't like, they replace. The problem in schools is feedback. And in some school groups, I've seen 4 levels of feedback. Parents on the school, teachers on the principal. Get a load of this. We Asians don't like to be told, and we Asians don't dare to tell. So this is an anonymous process where teachers give feedback on the principal, and you get to see whether there's a Hitler sitting in this school. Students are giving feedback on teachers. And whistleblowing policy. How many schools out there has whistleblowing policies? And if I can gloat, we have one. So if anyone thinks that Jaspal Sidhu has his wife, Shanti Sidhu, sitting somewhere and they're unhappy, or my brother is supplying furniture, there's a whistleblowing policy that they can call, they can activate. And believe me, I will face such consequences.
Right.
So that's something to think about.
That's a very, very personal yet profound example, and greatly appreciate. Because we are approaching the time, so therefore my interest is to take up as many questions as possible. The next question is, how do you meet the challenge of social distancing in schools, where large number of students versus the limited space? How do you address it? Of course, there's a question of shifting, multiple shifts, but there are multiple innovations in the format which perhaps you can help our audience with?
So, Navneet, honestly, I don't know. And I'm going to be very frank. This is an unprecedented crisis. I've never seen anything in my 30 years as immediate. Our schools have gone online because of floods, because of the haze. You know, this part of the world we get a lot of haze, demonstrations, riots. We've gone online, sometimes for a longer period, for sometimes shorter. But to say that now I'm going to open the school, and by the way, you cannot sit with each other, and you need social distancing, I'm actually confused and even lost. But what we do now is we watch what other countries are doing. China, for example, have started allowing their students to come back. And I don't like what I see, but it's interesting what they're doing. They've got these sneeze guards that they have put. So every child is almost sitting in what looks like a cubicle, but it's not a cubicle. They've got this glass thing that just in case, right? It's like a glass perplex things around them, right? So if they sneeze, but is that where education is headed to? That I need to sit there? How am I going to talk to the teacher? Where's my collaboration? I might as well ask them to stay home and collaborate over Zoom.
Yep.
Right? There are in Hong Kong, I hear they're allowing the high school and the upper secondary to come back first, and because the rest of the school to stay away. That creates space, so that will allow the high school kids to sit further apart. Now, I want to take back what I said. I'm not criticizing these approaches, but I'm saying I just don't know how putting those guards, those plastic guards, is going to create effective learning and teaching. So I really don't have the answers. We are actually our own school group in the next 2 weeks or so will be having discussions on how we are going to open schools. But I also want to tell everyone, you may want to open schools, but don't forget your parents may not want to come.
Yes.
They may be worried. And then you have a second problem. How do you run a classroom with 10 kids in there and 15 sitting outside? That's another problem for you to think about, right? I don't know what the solution is, right?
Right.
But we are drawing from the industry.
Great. I think we will keep our minds open to see what are the possible solutions which can come to our rescue. The next question, you mentioned about increased safety and germ awareness, but there is a concern that it can add to the cost structures. Any quick solutions on that?
Like the engineer with limited budgets, I will say look for places where there's high traffic. Just focus on those. And where places where there's no high traffic, maybe that's what you want to focus later, right? I don't like acting like a shepherd, insisting the sheep can only move in this other direction, but that could be something we all may need to do, that I can't allow you to go in those places because they're not treated, but you may have to be in these places. So you pick and choose, but I would say focus on the high traffic areas to do that. And honestly, it's a point that I brought up, but I don't know how many of us are going to actually go and look for germ coatings and doing. But I think there's enough of technology out there, enough of materials that we may want to consider.
Right. Then there is a question on the contactless admission process. From our own experience at Vijayabhumi and IFIM institutions, I can say that with a great deal of confidence that we have already perfected the drill of contactless admission process. But I think we can hear quickly from you how you are managing or how you have envisioned a contactless admission process.
So very, very interesting. We all had discussions, and I know one of my very capable board members listening in. He's an expert in branding, and he made a very interesting point that everyone is staying home right now. Everyone is on their smartphones. Get onto digital marketing, right? Don't disappear from, don't completely say I don't need marketing. So what we do, we've created virtual open houses. And I think there's something happening this weekend. If anyone wants to know how this thing happens, go to our website and see how these virtual open houses take place. It's a very seamless process from the point where you actually reach out to the school. We are testing it for the first time. So, but we've decided this is what we will do, and I think a lot of admission tests will be also online before we finally get the child and get the students in. But you know what, Dr. Navneet, you said you have perfected it. Tell me how you perfected. What is your process like?
All right. So in our process, what we have done is there are, of course, information sessions wherein registrations and the actual interaction on the course information about university, that is totally contactless. And the second stage is scrutiny or the admission test. That is again entirely online. You can take the test and wherever you are. And the third is the last phase of any counseling, any clarifications, and then is the offer of admission, deposit. So the entire value chain, all the three segments of the admission process have been converted into very specific online modules, contactless modules, wherein people are seamlessly asking us any number of questions. We are providing them fullest information. We are not only providing them clarifications with regard to our courses, but if they have any requirement in terms of career counseling, even that is the kind of service we are offering.
Excellent.
And I think it seems to be working. It's very early to say. I stand corrected that we are perfected, but so far our results are very encouraging. That's what I
Outstanding.
can say.
That's something that I should learn from you. After our weekend virtual open houses, let's see how things work. We'll have several of these. But the point to make out there to school operators is not disappear from the scene. While you are stressed, while you are focusing on other issues, you survive on enrollment, and therefore you need to be seen out there on these social media platforms.
Right, right. And then there's a follow-up question on reimagining the admission process. So in terms of the qualitative aspects of that, do you have any follow-up thoughts? How do you select people, basically, qualitative aspects?
So, okay, it all depends like this, right? So let me be upfront. Students in every school is looking at enrollment. Now, you are going to very quickly decide the kind of students you want to bring in. Now, I know schools that say, just bring them all in because I need enrollment. And then that adds a different picture to the actual teaching and learning. So I think the qualitative aspects largely comes from the interviews. I think when you have a robust interview process, not where teachers are just winging it, so what do you do? Tell me about your sports. But I think a very clear, again, I tell everyone here, there is a lot to learn from outside the education industry. When you talk to a lot of the employees, the kind of questions they ask is actually extracting attributes from that individual. So spend some time to see what the Apples, the Googles, the Starbucks, the Marriotts, what are they asking? What can you pick up from there? And that's what we do.
There is a question which is more like, how do you firefight? So the question goes like this, that,
an extinguisher.
Yeah, like an fire extinguisher. So basically the question is that the institution may choose to invest in technology and other related resources, trainings, etc. And it can take something like 6 months. But during this period, the situation can further deteriorate. The present turmoil can actually worsen. How do you handle this immediate turmoil, immediate problem?
Okay, so clearly there was probably lack of planning, which resulted in a late intervention, which created a turmoil. But it's okay. I'm one of those who say, if it's happened, look for solutions. It always comes down to how you communicate to your community. Now, that turmoil is very likely to come out from the lack of communication. That I this school, we are going to include technology. It's going to be step by step. It will be spread over 6 months. We need training. And during this period, what will happen? You will lay milestones out. You will lay issues. If you have an issue around this point, this is what you need to do. But the milestone says on such and such day, all primary schools will have the technology that they need, that we promise you. The secondary school will get 3 months later. So again, Dr. Navneet, I've said this in my earlier slide, that teachers need to know or need to be trained on communication skills. You know, in corporations, this comes naturally. I've got a solution. I've got a problem. I need to have a Gantt chart. I need to have milestones. I need to have review. This is very project management style of thinking, right? And because I have this, I got emails to various groups, no one panics. With teachers, you say something, you forget, you do something else, parents jump up, where is this, where is that? So I think there is a moment for us to now say enough of trying to teach you on too much of this delivery, get back into those soft skills.
Right. And then I think we have overshot the time, but last question I'm tempted to take is the online grading, the assessment and grading. Any thoughts on that?
So I'm talking to people from schools that are doing the IB. I'm talking to schools that have A levels. A lot of it will come back to predicted grades, what the school is saying and thinking about their own student. And here I want to make 2 points before we end, I'm sure. Number one, if you haven't done this before, this is a great time for you to start thinking about it, because we are going to be in this long haul. And to think about it, predictive grades is to think about the entire gambit, the child's learning journey, where and how he's reached here. So that's a different style of thinking. Number two, be very careful with those predicted grades, because you'll be judged by what you put on there. This is not a time to over predict, but at the same time not to be very, very careful. There's no harm getting second, third opinions from different experts, because your predictive grades will make a lot of difference in what people think of your school, one way or the other.
That's a very useful guidance to particularly the IB and other international boards, because that's where these questions are being deliberated. With this, I need to bring this session to the close, and let me invite your closing remarks before we close.
My closing remarks are these, right? That we need to go back and think about the executor, the one who will carry out the dreams that we have. And that person is the teacher. You need to have channels where the teacher can voice their opinion, they can voice their unhappiness. If you cannot get our frontline workers, our educators in the right frame of mind, then I think whatever you are planning, whatever you are saying in your brochure, holistic education, personalized learning, is probably not true, because your teacher levels, your stress levels of your teachers are high. The well-being of your staff, they are your biggest and most important assets of your school. And I wish everyone the best. Be safe, be healthy, and let's learn from each other. And I'm happy. I think my slide had my Instagram or my email. Happy to share with anybody with ideas.
Right, right. To all the principals and educators who are attending this session, I'm very happy to inform you that in our next lineup of the webinars, soon we will be hosting a chat session with Chetan Bhagat on the next 16th. And then after that, we will be hosting a close associate of Professor Howard Gardner, Jackie Chan. She will be coming to speak to the educators. So there are a number of important engagements or conversations which we will be hosting, and we look forward to your continued association with this series. There's one small announcement I can mention, is that our university is also carrying out a worldwide survey of how students are engaging themselves with variety of activities, how they're utilizing the time. And the survey link has been offered to you under the offers. I think there's a link which has come to you. We shall be grateful if you can encourage your students to take up that and help us with their answers, with their feedback. And we will, of course, on our part, share with you the findings of that survey.
One point I wanted to say is, as a school operator to all the schools out there, I'm pretty excited by what you are planning at Vijay Bhumi. I had a look at your liberal arts program and how students are going to get a gambit of exposure, where they'll be prepared for the environment, and very importantly, you're actually now in a position to, with COVID-19, to even think about their lives in the future. Honestly, I think a lot of the schools out there need to have a look at what you are doing. So outstanding job. Congratulations to you and Sanjay and everyone else.
Right. And my answer to all the people who have responded in the chat box, particularly to Ms. Shilpi Ganguly, don't worry, we shall continue the discussion. These conversations are as much illuminating to us as they are to you. With this, thank you very much for your great participation. Have a great day. Bye-bye to everyone.
Thank you. Be safe.